to
现
start
在
and then
将录
we'll
制本次会议。
Okay, there we go. All right, so thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing the Hytera Multi-Mode Advanced Radios. I'll go through some of the specifications of these devices. I'll share some examples of where these devices are used, and also what challenges some customers have and why these devices are relevant for those type of customers. Okay, so thank you so much. Let's start. Okay, so one of the challenges normally would be, let's say in a case like this where there's a scenario where there's a missing child. So normally if you only have a narrowband device, you would have to either communicate it verbally over the radio network, or you could do it via a text message. So normally it will have a text message. So for example, like this here where there's a missing girl, she's 1.2 meters tall. She's got blonde hair, blue eyes. She's wearing a white dress, and she was missing at the mall at 5 o'clock. So based off this description, the person would then have to try and look for this missing child. So using voice or text messaging, you're very limited to know exactly how this person would look, because there might be 2 or 3 girls that match this specific criteria. Where if you had a broadband type of connection, like a cell phone or a that can support receiving multimedia pictures, you can have an actual visual of what the missing child looks like. So this is where a multi-mode radio will be a good choice for a customer, because you can still use your narrowband for your voice communication, but it also will support for you to be able to receive multimedia like a photo or a video on the actual device. So it's more effective having a picture of a missing child than a description of a missing child. So this is one scenario where a broadband connection is required for you to be more efficient, to be able to assist with, like in this instance, a missing child. Okay. Another scenario is, let's say, for example, there is a call that comes from a radio in the field, and he then talks to the dispatcher. The dispatcher would then communicate back. Let's say, for example, it was a number plate of a vehicle. So the person that's out in the field would have to then supply the information verbally to the dispatcher. The dispatcher would then have to interrogate that information on a database, and then respond back to the officer in the field to say, okay, this for example, this driver's license has expired, or this number plate has expired. And typically something like this would take about 55 seconds times 2, which is about 110 seconds for you to be able to interrogate if this person's driver's license has expired, or if the number plate or the driver's license disc is no longer valid. Where if you have a multi-mode device, you could actually take a picture of that number plate. And if you have some intelligence, like number plate recognition software in the background, which is connected to a database, you can then interrogate that number plate, see it immediately on the system that it's expired or if it's still valid, and respond back to the device, which is about 11 seconds. So you can see there's a lot more efficiency in this way versus doing it verbally, because you would have to give the information. There's also much more chances of mistakes being made. For example, let's say if the person on this side was giving out the number plate and maybe the dispatcher captured it wrongly, it can also cause some mistakes. Where in this case, where you could take a picture of the number plate, upload it via the application, it will interrogate the database and immediately come back with feedback on the specific vehicle. So the room for error is also much less, and also the efficiency, being able to use smartphone capabilities for you to be able to interrogate information off a database. Okay, so it's improved by 10 times. Okay. Another scenario also is, let's say, for example, like for a special ops where there's a incident and the SWAT team needs to respond to that incident. There's always going to be someone that's going to need to communicate what's happening in the environment back to the control room, where the control room can then make decisions or give commands to the SWAT team. So there's a lot more that needs to be done to get the communication from what's actually happening to the control room for them to be able to evaluate what's going on. Whereas if you had a broadband connection, you can actually stream live video to the control room, and the control room can have visuals of what's actually going on and be able to immediately see and not needing to rely on information being fed from a specific person in that team to communicate back to the control room. And it's also then much easier for them to be able to make decisions and give commands of what needs to be done next. So this is also where a video or broadband becomes relevant for scenarios like this. Okay. Another scenario is, let's say you've got a metro police officer which is on a motorcycle. He would typically have his radio on him for voice communication. He would then also have to have some form of navigation, or for him to be able to navigate to specific locations. And he would also need to have some GPS for him to be tracked. You could also use the radio for your GPS tracking, but you would need to have multiple devices for you to be able to achieve your communication, your GPS navigation, all of those as well. Whereas a Android application has a big display, and you can have all of that information on a single display through a single terminal. So this is also where broadband becomes more relevant than a narrowband product. Okay. Another scenario also is, let's say, for example, there's a technician that's working at an airport, and he needs to do maintenance on certain airplanes. If he's only got a radio with him, he would need to speak to the control room. The control room would then have to give him the information of what plane he needs to go and investigate, the information. All of that needs to be done verbally. Whereas if he had a application that's on a smart device, he can actually have all of this access immediately available on the device, and he wouldn't need to be able to communicate verbally to get information from the control room. So this is also possible with applications that can be installed on the multi-mode device. Okay, so here's also a scenario where a broadband narrowband would be a better choice than just a narrowband. Another scenario also is, for example, for an energy company. So now they're busy doing some work outside, and they would need to also know what's happening while they're busy working on certain things. They maybe need to monitor certain levels, and this makes it difficult with just a narrowband device, because you would then have to have someone that can communicate or give feedback while they're busy doing work. Or you would have to have two devices, one for your communication and let's say like a tablet or something for you to be able to monitor certain levels. Whereas if you had a broadband device, you can have all of this visually available to you on the display of the terminal while the work is being done. Okay. So this is where a multi-mode device comes handy. So a multi-mode device can do all the functionality that you would have from a typical normal narrowband two-way radio, as well as support all the functionalities that you would have from a smart device. So you'll see you can do photos, you can install applications. Because it's running Android and it's Google certified, you can have Google Play Store on here. You can install any applications such as emails. You can do phone calls from here directly to another cell phone. You can also do record videos and upload and share those videos. So it's a very powerful tool, because it has capabilities of a smartphone as well as a narrowband mission critical device. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the models that we have. So you'll see on the left-hand side, we've got what we call a PTC 760 and a PDC 760. So the difference between these two is the P stands for portable, the T there is for Tetra, and the D there stands for DMR, and then the C is for cellular, and then the 7 is the series. So you'll see like the PTC 680 is a lower series than the PTC 760, and you'll also see it's smaller than the 760. There is also another model which is called a PDC 550. It's not on these slides. It's going to be in the POC terminals because it's labeled under the POC terminals, but it's also a DMR radio and a POC terminal. So you basically have one device, and it's an all-in-one device that has capabilities for you to be able to use the narrowband network as well as a public or LTE network, and it can also support Wi-Fi as well. It's got cameras on it, so all the functionality in a single device. So just to also, explain it again, so you've got an all-in-one control room. So you can have a business critical standby, which is the PTC 760 or the PTC 760. And then you can also have a mission critical focus terminal, which is the PTC 680. So the difference between these two is that this is a one-hand operational device, where this it's a bit more bulkier. So you would need to, if you want to reach all the corners of the screen, you would need to use both hands to operate this device, where this is a one-hand operation. Okay. So here's also some specifications. So you'll see, if you look at the dimensions here, you'll see this one is a lot narrower than this one, which allows you to be able to do a one-hand operation from this device. You'll see also these devices support 2 micro SIM cards, so you can have a dual SIM in here. So let's say, for example, in some areas you have good coverage on Vodacom, in some areas you have better coverage on MTN. You can have dual SIM cards in the device, and it will automatically switch between the 2 networks, whichever network is available. It also supports micro SD, so you can have a micro SD card in here if you need to expand the storage on the device. But it does have internal storage of 32 gigabytes. And also you'll see the RAM is 3 gigabytes of RAM on both of these devices. You'll also see the size difference on the screen. So that this has got a 4-inch display, where this has got a 3.6-inch display. And it also has a top screen here. You'll see on these two, it's being illustrated here at the top. This is for the narrowband part, and the main screen is for the broadband. Okay. So here's just some visuals on what the actual radio looks like. So this is the PTC 760. So you'll see the only difference between the PTC 760 and the PTC 760 is you'll see around the PTT button here, it's got a blue circle, where the DMR one has an orange. So you'll see if you look at this one, which is the PTC 760, you'll see it's got orange around here. The radio also has an option for a 4,000 milliamp battery, which can last you for a 24-hour shift. It also has dedicated buttons on the side, which can be programmed for certain functions. You'll see at the top here, you can see what channel you're on. Also, when someone is talking from a radio to this radio, it will display at the top as well on the main screen who's talking and what group it's is being talked on. It also has an LED here, which gives you the status, if it's receiving or transmitting, or if it's in hang time. It's got at the bottom, it's got a latch here where you can then remove the battery. You'll also see that the belt clip is directly fixed to the battery. So if, let's say, something had to happen and this had to break, it's not on the physical chassis of the radio, it's on the battery, so it's much more easier to replace and much more cost effective to replace it in this way. Okay, and then what else can I share with you? Okay, you'll see it's got a front facing camera, and it's also got a rear facing camera. It uses Gorilla Glass. It's military standard, so it's very robust, very reliable, and it's been tested and developed for harsh environments. Okay, so here's the visuals of the PTC 680. So you'll see it's much more slimmer for one-hand operation. It also has programmable keys at the bottom here. And also it's got a rear and front facing camera. One thing I can also mention is you'll see here where the antenna is, it's got a little blue circle here. These are interchangeable, so you get different colors. If I remember correctly, I think you get yellow, brown, orange, blue, and I think yellow. Well, I did mention yellow, but yeah, these are also interchangeable. So this can also be used to determine which group the specific radio belongs to. So you can have different circles on here for different groups. And then also it's got an accessory connector on the side, so you can connect external microphone on here. You can also connect our body cams to this device, and the body cam then becomes a PTT as well as a body cam. And then you can use this device broadband capabilities to stream video from the body cam, or you can use the actual device's camera to stream video. Okay. So also again, if you wanted to have broadband capabilities and narrowband, before you would have to carry 2 devices, which means you would have to have, let's say for example, like PD785 and a smartphone, whereas a multi-mode gives you both of these capabilities in a single unit. So there's less weight that you have to carry on you. So again, you'll see the design's got the top screen here and then the main screen in the front. You'll also see the knob here at the top. This knob has got a dual function, so you can either adjust the volume, or if you press it down once, you can then also change the channels on the radio. On the PDC 760, that specific model can do analog, it can do conventional tier 2 in DMR or analog. It can also do tier 3 trunking. And then on the PTC models, they all are Tetra, so they can work on Tetra systems, either direct mode operation or on a Tetra system. So again, here, if you look at this scenario here, so let's say you've got your DMR or Tetra network here, and you have your device. You would use the narrowband for your voice communications. And you would still also have the broadband capabilities if you register to an LTE network. It could either be a private LTE network or it could be a public network like an MTN or Vodacom. And you can then use both of these networks for you to have voice communication and broadband connection. We also have what we call radio over IP, which is ROIP, yeah, at the top. So this here is a solution we can offer where if, let's say, you move from one area that's your narrowband network into an LTE network, you would use the LTE network to communicate back to your DMR network or your Tetra network seamlessly. One of the nice things about our solution is that your radio ID is the same for either your narrowband network or your LTE network using our POC platform. So it's seamless communication from either one of the two, and this all the functionality still stays there, so you don't lose any functionality, except if you're on the LTE side, you have broadband, which means you can then do video and imaging as well. So there's just some illustration of what the main screen would look like. So you'll see at the top here, it will give you a battery level, the time, it will show you what signals you if you're connected to a cell phone network, if there's SIM card in it. So it's very much, it's because it's Android, it's very much like your normal Android, Samsung, or any of those type of phones, but on a ruggedized device and also having narrowband capabilities. You'll also see here, there's some upgrades that we've done on the latest firmware. So it's more streamlined, more easy to operate. It's more visible for you to see what's going on. And then also it's also fully customizable, so you can add widgets to the screen, you can hide certain menus if you don't want certain menus. So yeah, you can also see it's got some intelligence here where you can actually see what signal strength you're getting from your network. You can also see what channel you're on if you're on a trunking system or a Tetra system. And you can also view your calendars and all these, you know, so it's all the things you can do from a normal smartphone, but from a ruggedized mission critical terminal. Here's also some more what the screen shows, what you can do. You can also slide and remove certain things. You can turn on certain things. You can switch on your location or disable your location. One thing I also want to mention is because it runs Android and it's got all the capabilities of a consumer product, you can also lock down certain functions so that the user that's using the device are not able to have access to these things. For example, if you don't want the user to be able to disable the GPS or to be able to disable the Wi-Fi, you can remove those functions from the software, from the programming software as well, so that the user can only do what you allow them to do as an administrator. Here also just shows some more illustrations. So this is if, let's say, there's a text message that comes through on the device with some coordinates. You can then click on the coordinates. It will then open, let's say, to a Google Maps or whatever map application you're using, and then you can navigate from the device to the location that's being sent to it. You can also, you know, have the programmable buttons to do certain functions. So you can have a long press or a short press, and those buttons will then take you to specific menus or functions on the device itself. Okay, so functions and convergence. So it's got a large screen, so you can have all the smartphone applications. It's easy user interface, and then also because it's running Android, it supports all the applications that you can get from Google Play, or you can have, if you want to develop your own Android application, you can develop it and use it on the device. It also supports OTAP, which is over-the-air programming. You can do voice broadcast, voice assist. Voice assist would be similar to like Alexa. So you can give verbal commands to the device, and it will then respond to those. So you don't physically need to interact with the device with your hands. You can also verbally control the device or give it instructions. And then also it's using advanced global positioning, which is the GPS that's integrated into the device. So you can then also use it to navigate, or you can use it for your position, for tracking, all of that. Okay, so again, because it's got a big display, so you can easily from the display find a location. Sorry, let me just stop sharing. Sorry. Okay, so from the device, you can visually see what's going on, where you are, where you need to be. All of that can be done from the device. It also has a built-in, so for a compass. So if you need to walk or navigate, you can also see what direction you're moving into. So here's some functionalities that you get. So you've got your voice broadcast, voice assist that you can do, advanced global positioning, and then also you can do OTAP, which is over-the-air programming as well. Here's some other options that you can also do. Because it's an Android smartphone and it's got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, you can also connect Bluetooth accessories to the device. I've previously tested like a biometric reader for you to be able to take fingerprints. It will then send that fingerprint over Bluetooth to the device, and if you have an application on there, you can take that fingerprint and interrogate it with a database. For example, you can also pair it to a Bluetooth printer. So for example, where this is a handy feature, let's say for a police officer, he needs to issue a fine to a civilian that maybe over speeded or which didn't abide the road rules. He can then issue the fine from the device and print it from a Bluetooth printer, and then issue a paper to the person with the fine, and also have it registered on a database or on their system. You can also have some applications on here where you could have, for example, let's say if it was for a number plate recognition, or any type of application that you can think of. You can install it on this device, and it will then have the capabilities of working in that way. Also, you'll see there's some accessories because the device has got a accessory connector on the side, so you could have earpieces, or you can have an external microphone, or even bone conducting type of accessories in noisy environments, and you can still use the device as a normal radio and as a multi-mode broadband device. Okay. So let's talk about the security of the device. So I've already mentioned you can lock down the device, meaning the user will be limited to what they can enable and disable from the device. It also has some encryption on here, so it will encrypt the data. So if, let's say, the device is stolen and there's some sensitive information on here, it will be encrypted, so the people that would have the device in their possession cannot retrieve the data because it's all encrypted. And then also you can have some access control on it. So before you can use the device, maybe you have to put in a PIN, or you need to use your face to unlock the screen. So this is also capable of doing it. And then also you can also do system startup and checks. So when the device is switched on, it can then run through some analysis, see if it registers to the system, if all the applications, all of that are connected to the relevant databases it needs to connect to. Okay, so again, just the end-to-end encryption. So this is like I explained in the previous presentations, on a DMR radio, you can do end-to-end encryption over the air. This terminal also supports the encryption, so you can then have end-to-end encryption as what you had before. And then also if you're using the broadband capabilities for data, that can also be encrypted over the air. You can even install third-party encryption softwares like Kaspersky or any of those type of encryption applications onto the device if you want to use your own encryption. So again, like I mentioned, you can also have the data that's stored on the device encrypted. So if it gets stolen and in the hands of the wrong people, all the information and data will be encrypted as well. And you will not be able to unlock that data without the encryption key. And it's also a license that you have to purchase for this function on the device. Okay, so talking about the MDM, which is the programming software. So there's two versions on this. So you get an MDM Lite and an MDM Pro. The MDM Lite is you install it on your computer locally, you use a programming cable, and you then can program and configure the device through a cable. The MDM Pro you could install onto your network, and with the devices, because they have broadband capabilities, they could either connect to the MDM Pro using the Wi-Fi network or the SIM card. And you can, from the MDM Pro, you can monitor the devices, you can make changes on the devices, you can push new applications to the device, and you can have full control over the devices. It also will give you additional information like the battery levels. It will also tell you the battery cycle, how much is left of the battery before you need to replace it. It will show you the storage available on the device. All of that information can be retrieved and viewed from the MDM software. Because it's I'm going to go again back to saying, because it's mission critical, it's an Android and a mission critical device. It's got a large display. It has high resolution. It's got dual cameras, front facing and rear facing. It's got the intelligence of the Android platform. So you have limitless applications that you can install on it. There's also some accessories available for it, like for a vehicle installation. So yeah, this just also again comes back to the large display, the cameras. You'll also see it can do 4K video recording. I think it's at 30 frames per second. It's got autofocus. The video it will record in is an MP4 format, which is accepted by most media players and stuff. And also the photos will be in JPEG format. Okay. Again, rich applications. So it's basically endless of what you can do with it. Because it's Android, it's so open for you to have so many applications developed and working on the device. Okay, so here's just an example of a vehicle type of installation. So there's a car kit available where you can then dock the device into the vehicle. It will charge the device. You can have an external microphone which you can use for your voice communication. This communication could either be via the narrowband. If the narrowband is out of range, it will then use a broadband to communicate back into the network. Okay, so again, lightweight, single hand operation. It's ruggedized, loud and clear, and also it's got the GPS for you to be able to do tracking as well, to track the device and also to use it to navigate. Okay, so yeah, just some highlights again, some specifications, and then also some of the ruggedized. So it's IP68, so it's water resistant. It's been tested for drop tests up to 1.5 meters, and it passed those tests. It's also level 4 certified for ESD. It's military standard, which is the same as our DMR radios and Tetra radios. And then also it's got high-res imaging, Gorilla Glass 3, scratch resistant, and also it supports wet hands as well. So if your hands are wet and you want to use the screen, you are still able to interact with the device, and you don't have to first dry your hands in order for you to be able to use the display. Even if you're wearing gloves, you can still interact with the screen, and the screen will respond to your inputs. Okay. It also has noise cancellation and noise reduction built into the device, so it will also eliminate background noises like wind or machinery. All of that is also built into the device for the microphone, not to have unnecessary noises going with your voice communication. And then again, advanced global link positioning, which is the GPS. It can also use the Bluetooth. If you have Bluetooth beacons, you can use it for indoor tracking as well. Okay. Again, here's just some supporting documents, supporting applications. Because it's Google certified, you can install any application from the Google Play Store onto it, and you'll be able to use that. I've tested multiple applications before. I've tested YouTube works on the Waze, if you're using Waze for navigation. So I've tested quite a lot of applications, and I've never had any application not work on it because of it being certified by Google. I mentioned again the single knob that has got 2 modes, one for volume, and the second time you press it, it can be for changing channels. Also, again, some tests that you can do. So you can also use the device with applications on it to record your coverage. You can then collect information, send that data to a database. If you want to do coverage predictions, all those type of things you can do also from the device. And then also, again, it's a PTT over cellular as well as a narrowband. So you can support both of these functions from a single device. Okay, so here's just some broadband capabilities. So you can do push to talk, do a voice messaging, media messaging, talk permissions, real-time sharing. So you can do video streamings. You can also receive videos from other people. You can do video conversations between 2 devices. You can also do video surveillance from it. So all of that can be done from this device. Okay, and then also again the MDM. So typically, if you had to do a wired programming, so typically to program 10 devices, 6 minutes from reading and writing, or just let's say if you have a template and you want to populate that template to 10 devices, it can take you up to 6 minutes. Where if you're using the MDM Pro, you'll see there's some time inefficiency. So for example, if you had 1,000 devices that you need to program, it will take you 18 hours if you had to do it non-stop. Where if you had to push it over a broadband network, it can take you only 23 minutes to program all 1,000 of these terminals, if you have the sufficient bandwidth and data to be able to achieve it. Here's just also some accessories. So you'll see there's some Bluetooth accessory options here in the middle. Like this is a PTT that you can connect to a handlebar on a motorcycle. Here's a Bluetooth earpiece. You can also use a body cam to pair to the device. There's some external microphone, and then also some chargers as well. So it supports fast charging. So I think it takes 30 minutes to charge 60% of the battery. And then also you have multi-unit chargers, car kit accessories, and so on. Okay, and then if you buy a PDC 760 in the standard packaging, it comes with a 2,900 milliamp battery, charger, power adapter, strapped, all the necessary things. If there's additional things that you require, there's also accessories available. And then also for the PTC 680, so there's also it shares the same accessories as the PDC 760. Okay, is there any questions anyone has so far? Let me just see. No questions. Okay, so let me continue. So for example, like this here, sorry, let me just move this out of the way for me to see. So for example, this is typically how you would deploy it if you were using a narrowband system and a broadband connection for you to have convergence between LTE and narrowband. So you would typically have a single dispatcher here. So this would be the smart one. or professional unified communication server. And this would then also be connected to a, let's say, a POC 6000, which is our one POC platform. And then you would also have a DMR trunking system also connected to this professional unified communication server, which is what we call Smart One. So, for example, you have narrowband radios here, which is your DMR or Tetra radios, which is talking into a DMR system or Tetra system. And you can have a multi-mode device here, which can talk either to the narrowband or to the LTE POC platform. And then you can also just have a POC terminal, which can just talk to the PTT platform. So if this device here in the middle, which is the multi-mode, if it moves out of the DMR trunking network, it can still communicate back to the DMR trunking radios because it has the capabilities to communicate between the different platforms or different technologies. And like I mentioned before, you have one radio ID that belongs to the PTT platform and to the DMR trunking system. And wherever you registered between the two networks, you'll be able to use the same ID for communicating, and everybody will have that same ID if they want to make contact with you. Okay. Go to the next one. Here's also another scenario. So let's say if the narrowband system was from a third party, you could also use what we call MPUC, which is a mobile professional communication gateway, and you could connect a Tetra radio to this gateway or a DMR radio here, and you have full control over this radio, what it needs to do, who it needs to talk to, and your multi-mode device can register to a Tetra system on this side and have communication to a POC system on this side, and you will be able to communicate to DMR or to PTT. Okay. And then also, yes, just an example using a Tetra system on this side with our PTT platform on this side, and you have communication between the two systems. Okay, so where this would be adopted, let's say, for example, a police officer is moving between his existing Tetra network and, let's say, the public network. If he moves out of Gauteng, he uses the public network to talk back into the Gauteng Tetra network, as an example. And you also have the capability of doing number plate recognition, scanning and checking specific IDs, or interrogating a person's identity to a database if it's a missing person or a wanted person. All of this information can be used from the device. Okay, here's also another example. So you've got Metro Police motorcycles where they're using the multi-mode device, so they can use the radio over IP, and they can also do Bluetooth printing. If they had a printer that has the Bluetooth pairing capabilities, they can also print or send a document to the printer over Bluetooth that can print it on the location where it needs to be printed and give it to the person. And then again, if we look at the scenario I used before, so for SWAT team, they can use this device for communication as well as video streaming and all of those capabilities that you have from a broadband connection. Again, for airport, so it's a lot, again, like I explained before, where you could use a single terminal for your normal indoor-outdoor communications, as well as run applications for you to be able to see what planes need to be serviced, which need to be inspected. Information about the plane can also be displayed on the terminal if it can have access to a database that has that information stored. And then also, again, for the industry, where they could use a device like this for normal narrowband as well as broadband, and have applications to monitor stats live as it happens on the system. Okay, I think I'm not going to go into the case studies. We've got 20 minutes left. Is there any questions anyone has or want to know more about before I continue? Can everybody still hear me? Is there anything that anybody still wants to ask?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so if there's no questions, I can quickly go through some case studies just to show you where we've deployed our devices Here in South Africa, we've deployed it at South African Airways. They're using it to be able to communicate on the existing Tetra network, but they also use the broadband capabilities to scan barcodes as well as take pictures of certain like planes, or if there's maintenance that need to be done, they can also use it for that. Or if, let's say, there's an engineer off-site and there's a person on the ground, they can also use the video capabilities to stream or have live imaging going to the engineer to see what's actually happening or what's wrong with the plane, and he can then remotely assist to tell them what they need to do to fix the problem. It can also be used, let's say, for example, in a scenario where there's a person that's injured next to the road, and the paramedics might not know how to resolve or help the person that's maybe they have a bad injury. If there's a doctor off-site, they can also use the video capabilities to stream to the doctor to show this is what the wound looks like, how do they treat it, and the doctor can then have visuals of what's happening and communicate back to them to tell them what they need to save the person's life. So these are just some scenarios in some ways where a device like this can be very handy to some customers. So I think I can go through the case studies. We've done quite a lot of case studies. So let me share some to you. So here's where we've deployed our PTC 760, which is the DMR model, to the police in Peru. So you'll see they're using it for communication as well as some applications which the police have developed themselves. And they also have a POC application on it. So if they move out of the existing network, then they can also use the PTT to communicate. And there's also, they use it also for Bluetooth to a printer to print specific fines to issue to a person that's maybe did something wrong. Here's also where it's being used for public security. So using it for narrowband and also PTT. And they're also using the video camera option for them to have live video streams in cases where they need to have a control room that can see what's going on and be able to instruct the people on the ground what they need to do. Here's also where it's being used at the border defense for armed police. So they're using their own application with our device. So let me go back one. And also using the POC capabilities as well. Here's also being used again in Peru. There's a fire department in China that's using it. So they're using their own application. It could be an application maybe if there's a fire and someone's reported the fire. The application would then notify the user, give them the position of where the fire is, and they can then respond to it immediately and use the device to navigate to the location. Okay. Here's also again where it's being used in Shanghai for a fire department. So they're using the PTC 760 with a POC application on it, and also using our MT680 Plus mobiles. Here's also again in Abu Dhabi, the police, they're using our multi-mode devices with applications on it. Here's also where it's being used as well for the police with a POC application and Tetra. And I can see they're using the 800 megahertz frequency in this country. Also here again, Tetra base station using our device with PT580s. So if they move out of their Tetra network, they can also still communicate or you'll use the broadband capabilities to still collect information. And this is in Angola. Okay, some airports where this is being used. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this. I'm going to go to all the details, but we've deployed these in multiple countries for airports, for public safety, for fire, and it's been very successful, and a lot of customers have benefited from these terminals to be able to have broadband and narrowband. Here's just some electricity or energy companies that are using our devices. So if there's any questions, you guys are welcome to ask. Okay, I'll give you guys some time to think about anything. Is there specific questions anyone has or want to know more about? You are free to ask. Okay, seems there's no questions. This is being recorded, so we'll share the recording on this webinar. I'll also be sharing, if you guys want a copy of the presentation, I can share it to you as well. But yeah, I think then that's the end of today's session. If there's any other questions that you guys might have after this session, you're also welcome to email me or communicate with me or phone me, and I'll gladly assist to answer these questions. So thank you so much everyone for joining today's session, and we'll have another session again next week, Tuesday. You're welcome, Jonathan. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Franco.
Jonathan, are you still here?